Many mass shooters are deeply troubled and unstable individuals who exhibit strange behaviors prior to an attack. The Dunblane Massacre perpetrator was no different. He was unemployed, former shopkeeper and Boy Scout leader, Thomas Hamilton. Upon learning about his identity following the horrific shooting that resulted in 17 deaths at a primary school, police reconstructed his movements in the hours leading up to the massacre. They learned that Hamilton had driven 7 miles from his home in Stirling to Dunblane Primary School in Scotland. Evidently, Hamilton had planned out the entire shooting and targeted the primary school specifically. He didn't target people who could fight back. Instead, he went after the weakest and most vulnerable demographic in society, young kids. Thomas Hamilton rolled up to the school in a rental van and parked in the school car park. Sinister thoughts swimming around his sick mind, he set out to ruin lives. Chillingly, it would be learned that Hamilton attempted to cut the school phone lines. However, he mistakenly cut the lines to houses in the surrounding area. He probably did this to prevent police being dispatched. As you'll soon learn, regardless of if he did this or not, it probably wouldn't have made much difference. Hamilton exited his van and put on earmuffs to drown out the screams of innocent children. Somehow, he managed to gain access to the school and nobody noticed him slink into the building. Not long prior to his arrival, children had finished listening to an assembly. Hamilton was now in the process of making his way there. It should be noted that Dunblane Primary School was the largest primary school in Scotland at the time. It has been said that Hamilton was specifically trying to target the school during assembly hours, because nearly all of the school's 250 pupils would be in attendance. Hamilton had figured out this information the week prior to the shooting when he talked to a young boy. The boy had accidentally given him the wrong time, and probably saved more innocent lives since Hamilton had over 700 rounds of ammo and 4 handguns on his person. Thomas Hamilton entered the assembly hall to find it completely empty. Likely filled with rage and confusion, he fired shots into the stage and into the girls' toilets. Like with many other mass shooters, he was determined to inflict as much damage as possible and was determined to carry out his massacre before ending his pathetic life. Upon hearing children's excited laughs nearby, he followed the muffled noises, gun in hand. Hamilton entered the school gymnasium and began firing at 3 teachers, who were getting ready to teach the kids. The children's main teacher, Gwen Meyer, was killed trying to shield her class. In a spur-of-the-moment decision, the remaining 2 teachers fled to a nearby storeroom, suffering from gunshot wounds. Some children also managed to take cover in the storeroom, but many didn't make it. It's tough to imagine the fear and hopeless feelings that the young children experienced prior to being murdered. The shooting lasted a few minutes but must have seemed like hours. Having to hear gunshots and sounds of dying children must have been horrible. By the time that the teachers and students exited the storage room, the gymnasium was littered with bodies, and Thomas Hamilton's body lay amongst them. Parents received the call about a shooting at Dunblane Primary School. They were told to come back to the school to fetch their children. Police, local residents and the media had surrounded the school. At the time, there was mass confusion as to what had actually happened. As the hours passed, more information became available. It would turn out that the incident only concerned one class in the primary school. The teacher of this class was named Gwen Meyer. Her class contained 18 children, ranging from the ages of 5 and 6. 16 parents of children from the class were led to the staff room. However, they were left in the dark about what had occurred. Many surmised that a serious incident had taken place, but information was still scarce and nobody could say for certain what the problem was. Parents asked the questions. Is my child still alive? Is my child hurt? It would emerge that 16 children had been murdered in the school. Having to hear this devastating news would cripple anyone, but the parents of those lost would feel a range of mixed emotions. Many felt angry because they'd been left to sit and wait for hours, without any updates. Other parents felt numb to the news. Nobody could have expected this horrific news, everyone was in complete disbelief. In the coming days, parents of the children whose lives had been lost were forced to come to terms with what had just happened. The question of why anyone would shoot up a school full of primary school children baffled everyone. This was Scotland and mass shootings were, and still are, extremely rare. The police and media investigated Thomas Hamilton and looked into his history to find clues as to why he could have done this. Hamilton had a self-inflicted gunshot to the head and wouldn't face justice for this sickening crime. However, like with many mass shooters, the warning signs were there. Many parents would say that the fact that Hamilton owned 4 handguns and 1,500 rounds of ammunition was a major red flag. He had owned firearms for over 20 years and it was a big hobby of his. Furthermore, his behavior around boys whilst he acted as a scout and boys club leader was apparently inappropriate and strange to some parents, but not to others. I've come across mention of Hamilton being a pervert during these club gatherings, but he was never charged for any crime associated with this. Police did find photographs of boys in swimwear at his home, and he does look like a stereotypical sex offender. These facts, along with him seemingly only really hanging around children, are probably not good indicators that he was above board and right in the head. Parents could tell that he was too strict with their children, and he had an odd aura. His conduct had some parents feeling as though his guns should have been taken long prior to the massacre. Families of the victims gathered to listen to details about the massacre. Many were left traumatized upon hearing about how their children had perished. In a bid to find someone responsible, the local police force was held accountable because of how they conducted themselves on the day of the massacre. Failures to intervene with Thomas Hamilton, who had been banned from schools in Dunblane, were also looked into. Hamilton's behavior at the boys' clubs that he ran was the reason as to why he was banned. Many people believed that this was the reason as to why he picked the primary school. Other people have suggested that his financial problems were to blame. A campaign to ban legally held guns was put in place because of the Dunblane Massacre. Larger caliber handguns were made illegal because of the actions of one sick individual. Smaller caliber handguns were banned later on in the same year. To the credit of this campaign, these new laws prevented handgun massacres in the United Kingdom. However, massacres continue to happen, regardless of if someone has access to firearms. It's easy to blame the firearm rather than the individual. Shaming legal gun owners who comply fully with the law is not the way to go. Clearly, you're never going to be able to fully recover from losing a child. To make the community feel slightly better, the gymnasium at Dunblane Primary School was demolished because it would forever continue to serve the reminder of such a tragic moment in history. Thomas Hamilton is gone, and his motivations aren't entirely clear. I'm sure that a combination of events transpired in his life which resulted in such a depraved act of human cruelty. It's easy to point out the red flags after such a crime has happened. However, the reality is that warning signs are always ignored, and this is the end result. Even though the handgun ban decreased shootings in the UK, mass sprees are never going away. In recent years, mass shootings have been replaced with mass stabbings. A recent spree saw 3 innocent people being stabbed to death in Nottingham by a West African migrant.